Welcome to this special federal budget program. Well, Wayne Swan has got his cherished surplus, but business is counting the cost. The Federal Treasurer has forecast a surplus of $1.5 billion next financial year and slim surpluses for the next 3 years.
Now, Mr Swan's ditched the company tax cuts that were set to be blocked in Parliament, and he also says the funds will be used to redistribute the benefits of the mining boom. The Treasurer says the budget is a strong endorsement of the strength of the Australian economy.
This budget delivers a surplus this coming year on time, as promised, and surpluses each year after that, strengthening over time. It funds new cost of living relief for Australian families. It helps business invest, compete and adapt to an economy in transition. And it finances bold new policies to help Australians with a disability, the aged and those who cannot afford dental care. It does these things for a core Labor purpose, to share the tremendous benefits of the mining boom with more Australians, to create more wealth, prosperity and jobs, spread more opportunity and advance the living standards of millions of families and pensioners on modest incomes.
Wayne Swan delivering his budget speech last night. So, the big ticket items in this budget include the $3.6 billion package that Wayne Swan calls spreading the benefits of the boom. That's aimed at low and middle income earners. The package includes $1.8 billion in extra family tax payments, $1.1 billion for a low income supplement for the unemployed, students and parents with young children.
$2.1 billion for direct payments to parents to help with education costs, $1 billion to start the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and more than $500 million to improve dental care.
We're joined now by our political correspondent Melissa Clark in Canberra. Melissa, good morning. Well, by hook or by crook, that surplus has been achieved.
And that promise has been kept at the expense of a number of other promises. The government was going to do everything it could to make sure it had surplus on the books for 2012-13 and beyond. Now, it is only by a very small margin for $1.5 billion for 2012-13, only $2 billion after that. And even in the forward estimates, we're only talking a bit over $5 billion and $7 billion for the 2 years after that. So these are quite small surpluses and certainly can be impacted by the vagaries of the economy. And that's particularly pertinent when you consider that for the current financial year that we're in, the deficit at the moment, and we haven't even got to the end of the financial year, but the deficit at the moment is now $44 billion. That's twice what the government had forecast at this time last year. So if you were to have a blowout of this magnitude just again next year, then that surplus is well and truly gone. Now, not only that, to get to that slim $1.5 billion surplus, not only have they had to cut a range of promises, they've had to do plenty of shuffling around as well. There's something like $1 billion in local government payments that were meant to be next year, but they've quickly hurried forward to this year to help get the numbers into line. They're cracking down on tax cheats in the hope that that will help bring more money in as well. So what we have is the opposition Treasury spokesman Joe Hockey saying he's not entirely convinced that the government can actually make that surplus, even though it's forecast one for 2012-13. Let's hear from him last night.
This government is relying on a $39 billion increase in revenue this year. $39 billion, $34 billion of extra tax this year. And they're claiming it's a tough budget? Well, it's a handout budget. It's an incredibly confused budget. It's got no clear message about the economy. It's going to disappoint a lot of people when they see the details.
Joe Hockey there claiming the budget is a bit confused, but I suppose, Mel, the big theme running through the budget is the government's intention of soaking the rich and big companies in particular and handing money back to lower and middle income earners.
And this is where we see a big turnaround for the federal government, because one of the key parts, almost the key to this budget, is scrapping this plan of having a 1% reduction in the company tax rate. Now, you might remember that was one of the centrepieces of the government's mineral resources rent tax. The mineral resources rent tax was meant to take profits from the boom and you take those profits and help use them to help other parts of the economy that were suffering under the high dollar and the other difficult conditions that the boom created. And that was things like increasing superannuation superannuation guarantee, but also this 1% tax cut across the board for all companies. Well, facing a bit of gridlock in Parliament, the federal government has decided not to go ahead with it. But instead of giving it to businesses in some other ways, they've changed tack and are now giving it to lower income earners through an increase in payment in the Family Tax Benefit Part A, and also through a supplementary allowance, which basically goes to anyone who is currently getting any kind of income welfare support. So it's a big switch of we're talking billions of dollars. Instead of going directly to companies, is now going directly to welfare and low-income households. Now, business is likely to be not too impressed with that. They're still wanting to see some kind of guarantee for this company tax cut in the future. But for Labor, it hasn't really satisfied the welfare groups either, because they were looking for a permanent increase in the New Start, in the dole allowance, rather than a one-off cash bonus handout. So Labor is struggling to win on that front, even though that's a key to this budget.
And also about to feel a fair share of pain are both the states and the territories.
Now, this is something that is going to have an ongoing impact, because when we talk about the revenue write-downs, and we'll have heard plenty of Wayne Swan talking about just how much less tax they've been able to gather because of the ongoing effects of the global economic slowdown. Let's take a look at what that really means for the bottom line. Let's take 2012-13, for example. Next financial year, the one we're getting back into surplus, the federal government is taking in less in tax of $7.8 billion. However, it's also paying out less in payments, more than $4 billion. We're talking about $4.8 billion worth less. So that's effectively GST payments that the states aren't getting because GST revenue isn't coming in. So the federal government's only worse off in the order of $2 or $3 billion, but collectively the states and territories are missing out on almost $5 billion. And keep in mind that a number of states have already just handed down their own very tough budgets. There may well need to be some more cuts from the states and territories if they are determined to try and keep their AAA ratings in light of these figures.
Melissa Clark in Canberra, we'll leave it there. And there'll be further budget analysis throughout the program this morning, including interviews after 7 o'clock with both the Treasurer Wayne Swan and the Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey.